Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the GSMC Sports Network. Before we get into our second segment of today's show, I do want to remind you yet again that if you haven't done so already, consider liking, following, and subscribing to the podcast or other shows on the network and the network itself to keep up to date with all our new and fresh content that we release each and every single day. But if you do want to contribute and interact with the show a little bit more directly, consider making yourselves available to the Super Chat, Super Thanks, and Super Stickers features here on YouTube. Great way to contribute and interact with the show, like I say. Just makes it that much better. You can do it through our website as well, gsmcspodcast.net, as it scrolls my ticker below. But other than that, just know that it's greatly appreciated, whatever manner you choose to contribute to the overall outlook of this show. I really do thank you all. But without further ado, let us get into our second segment, talking about our final wildcard matchup of the weekend, Vikings-Rams, and the interesting and somewhat devastating storylines around this game. Before we have to get into any football talk thus far, I do want to make this very clear. My thoughts and prayers are with all those affected in the wildfires taking place in LA, the reason why ultimately this game did have to be moved to Arizona. But sometimes people's safety, people's livelihoods is bigger than sports, and I do want to acknowledge that wherever you are in the LA area, I am praying for you. We all are praying for you, and hopefully your safety isn't compromised by any sporting event, and just stay safe no matter what you do in terms of supporting your team. But ultimately, that is a bigger point that I had to make before we talk about the overall aspect of this game. But ultimately, it should still be an exciting game. Hopefully, will uplift the spirits of many in LA should the Rams come out on top. And even as someone who is a Seahawks fan, sees the LA Rams my rival, I'm still rooting for a fantastic game for the livelihoods of those affected by the LA wildfires. Without further ado, let's preview this game because it should be a good one. Rematch of a Vikings loss, only one of 3 losses the Vikings sustained this season after the bye. And so I do think that there's a modicum of revenge here. Obviously, the Vikings are seeing this as somewhat of an advantage, this game being moved to Arizona, but I don't think that the Rams are really going to be flustered at all. They're still going to play with their physical brand of play. They can't be underestimated at all. Really, ultimately, I had to tip my cap to them as a Seattle fan. Did deserve to win this division. Won the games they had to. And that is why they are what they are, no matter what's going on in their neighborhood. And so, in this game, I do feel like maybe psychological tolls will take place in some LA Rams players, but ultimately they're still going to play with passion for their city, passion in terms of wanting to make a statement here as well, say that they had to be looked out for as true Super Bowl contenders in the NFC. So I'm really looking for a good one. The Vikings, though, I do believe are still the favorites. I haven't necessarily checked the lines as much after transferring to this podcast, but I do think it will still be a good one. But ultimately, let's talk about some of the keys to victory here for both of these squads. And I think the main one for at least the Vikings here, keep Sam Darnold in rhythm. That's where Sam Darnold has looked his best for this team, when he stays on schedule. And Kevin O'Connell has done a really great job of mixing in play action to really show off his arm strength, really get him comfortable to the point where, he is operating at a high level. Most importantly, not necessarily putting the ball in harm's way as well. And he has the supporting cast to sustain him. I really think that a big difference in this game is that TJ Hawkinson, I believe this was his first game back after the ACL tear, if I'm not mistaken, in the regular season. And now he's at the point where he's become one of the biggest Vikings contributors in terms of the play action downfield passing game. So I think he's going to be an even huger factor in this one than he was in that regular season matchup, because I don't necessarily think he was 100% in that game. But now he should be ready to roll and ready to be a vital piece of this Vikings offense tonight. But then the rest of the Vikings offense as well offers so much versatility, because Justin Jefferson can help you in so many different ways if you're Minnesota tonight. He can open up space for a lot of these guys, exploit different coverages, really work man-to-man against this young Rams secondary, really challenge them a lot more than the last game, and then really also be the security blanket that Sam Darnold so vitally needs. Because remember, while Sam Darnold has played incredibly well, there are also still moments where he seems mortal. The same old Sam Darnold sometimes. That last regular season game against the Lions, where they could have won the NFC North and could potentially have not been in the situation, potentially be sitting at home waiting to find out who their matchup would be. And so that kind of sentiment can still sit in the back of people's minds when they talk about Sam Darnold, and a big reason as to why you might want to eschew that notion is because of Justin Jefferson, and because of what he can open up, especially in the comfortable areas of the passing game for Sam Darnold. I do think that Sam Darnold can overcome the pressure the Rams will put on him, because remember, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk really are performing admirably in the shoes of Aaron Donald that they're trying to fill. And even though, there still are some inconsistencies in this Rams defense, I still think that this secondary especially is still coming along. They have a lot of great young players in the secondary, Cameron Kinchens being one of them. And they really have done an outstanding job at all three levels to get everyone connected. But ultimately, there still are going to be many ways that Kevin Connell feels he can attack this Rams defense and really get Sam Darnold into the rhythm that he was comfortable with throughout the entirety of this season. And now they have everyone at full health. TJ Hawkinson, like I said, is going to matter a lot more. And the Rams might be on their heels a little bit more than they expect compared to last game. So that's why I think if this game plan works out for Minnesota and Sam Darnold remains the steady hand they need him to be, then this game's going to be a lot closer, and potentially a game where the Vikings can take some control after a couple of quarters. So that's the danger that this Vikings offense can pose if you're the Rams defense. But I do believe that the Rams defense will make a game out of this, really make this an interesting tactical matchup between their defense and this Vikings offense. And the Rams side of things, I feel like this game's going to be won and lost in terms of the time of possession battle. And I say this a lot in terms of how certain teams view the game plan, both offensively and defensively. But especially for the Rams, I feel like their run game is going a little bit underestimated in this one in terms of how they can control the tempo of this one. Most importantly, keep this Vikings offense off the field and really help their defense win the field position battle. And so, while a lot of people might expect the Rams to come into this one with Matthew Stafford really looking to Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua to move the chains constantly and on a consistent basis, I feel like Sean McVay might just want to really take the pressure off these receivers and this very, very aggressive Vikings defense and try and pound the rock. Because remember, this Vikings defense still is one of the best disguise and coverages. And yes, Matthew Stafford in that last regular season game was perhaps the most efficient quarterback against this Vikings defense when they were putting pressure on him, when they were blitzing him. But ultimately, I do feel like the Rams are all about balance at their best. Yes, you have these chain-moving receivers. And yes, you have Matthew Stafford who's perfectly capable of winning a game through the air. But I love when the Rams are in rhythm with the balance and complementary football that running the football with Kyren Williams presents. And it also depends, right, on whether or not Kyren Williams is on, because when he's on, he's one of the better running backs in the NFL. But when he's off, he really hasn't necessarily been that big a factor in Rams games. And that kind of leads to people's worries, pundits' worries, especially about their inconsistency on offense. So I do feel like Sean McVay is going to want to target the first 15 especially to kind of feel out the Vikings defense. And hey, if the run game doesn't work out and you have to try and abandon it, then I feel confident that Matthew Stafford can, like last game, really be efficient enough against the blitz to keep the Rams in this game. But I do want to see this Rams offense be perfectly complementary to this defense is capable of doing. Because if not, that's what I start to fear for the defense. Because the Vikings are an offense that have had their troubles this season, have had certain pratfalls, this Rams game notwithstanding, in the regular season. But when they get in rhythm, that's where they're dangerous. And you don't want Sam Darnold at a point where he's really feeling himself in terms of the downfield game, especially in play action situations with this very hot receiving core and a tight end who's now fully healthy for this matchup. So that's why I feel like the Rams, in at least this game, have to buy into the mantra of ball control. Because chances are, if you win the time of possession battle, the Vikings offense can get in rhythm. The defense isn't backed up in certain situations, and ultimately you're staying on schedule offensively and trying to remain as consistent as scoring points as you can possibly be. So that's where I can see the Rams winning a hugely important matchup in this game. Because I also feel like the run game for Minnesota can go either way as well. I really love what Aaron Jones can do when he's on, and I really think it affects this Vikings offense when they're off. So that's why I feel like the run game can be absolutely integral to both of these teams' success in A, winning the time of possession battle, and B, ultimately winning this game. So it's an interesting debate here, but ultimately, when talking about this game, my thoughts and prayers go out to all the Rams fans and the people still in the LA area affected by the LA wildfires. Like I say, people's livelihoods, people's ultimate safety is bigger than sports sometimes. So I'm praying for you. Hopefully the Rams can make this a competitive game, even in a tough environment where they're outside their home stadium. But I do think ultimately, in terms of predictions, because I'm a Vikings fan, because my dad's a Vikings fan, I might have to pick the Vikings, and I do think that they might get a little bit more of the running game as well. But ultimately, I'm really looking for this Rams team to show a lot of passion in this one, despite what's going on in their hometowns. But let me know what you think about this game and how this might play out in the football field. And I'm coming next week previewing another game taking place at West with another LA team in terms of the NBA. Spurs-Lakers. First game for the Lakers after a lot of postponements, and Spurs team coming off a 3-game losing streak trying to get back into the play-in picture should be a good one tonight. We'll be right back to talk about it after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to